worst elements of the Muslim societies, maintains their power, sells them weapons, and then when they get out of control, bomb them into non-existence, and then tell us that they're the bad guys.
No,
Muslims are not producing armaments anywhere. There's no Muslim country right now that is producing any serious level of armaments. The Egyptians produce some very poorly functional Kalashnikov.
No, Pakistan is producing.
And Pakistan produces. I mean, by and large, no Muslim country is producing fighter pilot jets.
But they can't afford to.
Whether
That's
they can
the
afford
point.
it or not,
No, but
they can afford to buy them.
That is the.
They can afford to buy them. Who's selling them? Who's selling them?
No question. When you say that no other country except the United States and the West is building up this arms arsenal.
That's true.
You're right.
China is another, but Japan is not. Japan is I mean, it's in their treaty with America. They don't develop. The only countries that are developing weapons seriously are the communists, the ex-communist quote unquote countries, China and the West. The Muslims are not doing that, and yet Muslims are blamed for using all the weapons.
Well, they are.
Because they're sold to them, and then wars are set up to get them fighting each other, and I agree. The Muslims should be more intelligent than to fall into these traps. At the same time, I don't want to hear the West preaching to me. As a Western person who's educated and understands this, as a Western person who's educated and understands this, I don't want them preaching to me about how terrible these people are over there, because this country has no moral authority to do that. And I would agree that the Muslims right now in their present condition have no moral authority either. And that is why, in a sense, globally, if you want to talk about the challenge of this century, our challenge is, how do we redeem ourselves? Not just as Muslims, as human beings. How does this planet redeem itself from the conditions that it finds itself in? And I think the Muslims are one segment of the human family.
And certainly Muslims in this equation of globalization, they are not the ones who are going to rule, because once this whole idea of one world as is being created, it is decidedly the West which has the hegemony of resources. And it doesn't have the hegemony of resources, it has the hegemony of the exploitation of resources.
And of the ideas. The vast majority of resources are in the Muslim world.
And of the ideas, yes, the ideas to control.
I mean, material resources are in the Muslim world. And in fact, a lot of the intellectual, I mean, this country has a massive importation of intellect. I mean, some of the best and brightest, and you're among them. From the Muslim world, no, seriously. You're an educated doctor that works at high levels of professionalism in this country, and yet you're a Muslim from Pakistan. They brought you to this country. They didn't have to let you into this country, but they wanted what you had to offer this country.
But I came here because of
your
the
skill.
Freedom that and the opportunity.
Whatever reasons you came here, that's fine. I'm not interested in that. My point is, this country imports some of the best and brightest intellects from all over the world and leaves those countries impoverished. Now you can say, well, those countries don't provide the freedom that I need to express myself or to live fully or something like that. Life is a struggle.
Yeah, but
how are we going to change those countries if the best of those countries abandon those countries and come to this country and then start pointing fingers at those countries and tell us how terrible they are?
I think I concede to you the argument that the best of us out there are here. And
well, I wouldn't say the best in terms of spiritually or morally, but I would say certainly the brightest, some of the best and brightest in terms of education and secular education in particular.
I agree with that, but the fact of the matter is, if somebody was to suggest to you that the most powerful ideas originating from the West during the last century, and you may disagree with that, are democracy and human rights. And that itself
I totally disagree with that.
I know you would.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the biggest lie that's ever been perpetrated on. First of all, democracy is the worst form of government, according to Plato, outside of tyranny. Yeah, I mean, it's the one right before tyranny, the demos. I mean, democracy, they're the ones that condemn Socrates to death. right? So much for democracy. Democracy in the eyes of some of the most brilliant philosophers of human history. Democracy is this country. How many people voted this year?
Well, yes.
40%? 40%?
We are
how many elected the president? 17%? 18%?
We are dissecting the processes now. We are not really...
No, but democracy has
democracy.
never existed. It's a lie. You've never had the rule of a people. You've had the rule of an elect. This country was founded as a republic. That's why the Electoral College exists, to make sure that nobody gets into power that wasn't meant to get into power.
Right.
So a crisis in democracy, according to their own theorists, is when the people actually start getting involved in politics seriously, like what happened in the 1960s, when you had serious political dissent in this country, and yet those so-called democratic forces in this country mobilized with everything they had in their arsenal to completely fragment political dissent in this country that was grassroots and widespread. People were eliminated. Some of the best voices of that generation were assassinated. And most of those assassinations, no, seriously.
No, seriously, one of the things.
So
those statistics,
they can talk about democracy, but whether it exists or not is another thing. As a concept, the rule of the people, as a concept.
I was coming to it.
I would say first,
people's government, a representative government,
a representative government,
a process that will give people their rights.
Islam had that 1,400 years ago.
No, when you say that democracy does not exist, are you saying that an Islamic state ever existed?
I think an Islamic state, I don't like that word, but I would say Islamic governance has existed historically.
Some form of Islamic governance.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I would say it existed at the time
democracy.
of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ.
That's
It
correct.
existed during the four Khulafa, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, and then you had it with just rulers that existed in different parts of the world.
From then on, we have had
it was fragmented.
Dynastic
It's never been
rules. We have had despots. We have had one record.
Oh, well, Sheikh Uthman Dan Fodio, who founded the
Yes.
Sokoto government, was definitely an example of a governance according to the prophetic tradition. And I think you could argue that there were certain rulers in India during the period of, they were dynastic nonetheless, but I think that there was a high level of benevolence towards, I mean, I think government is always, at best, it can be benign. I don't think that your governance is a human problem. I mean, we have human beings that need to live and function together, so that when you bring in that element of government, there's always inherent dangers in that. And I think even within the Islamic tradition, government, there's a real serious suspicion of governance in Islam.
Well,
because the nature of governance, the nature of power. I mean, this is Chesterton, all these power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, and also powerlessness corrupts, and absolute powerlessness corrupts absolutely. It works both ways. Human beings are complicated, and I think that government is a serious human problem. We have never had an ideal government. I do not believe in utopianism. I think Muslims that believe in an Islamic state as this utopian, perfect society is an illusion. It is a lie. And the reason that we don't believe in utopia is because this world was meant to be a struggle. It was never meant to be a place where we all get complacent, feel comfortable, and think everything's fine. No, there's a lot of problems out there, and that's what jihad is about. Engaging the world, struggling to make it better, but recognizing that it will always have its inherent flaws.
So then you are really coming back to an evolutionary process that needs to occur on the strength of the core of the ideology that Islam expounds for us.
Well, I wouldn't use the word ideology, because I don't think Islam is an ideology.
Well,
ideology is actually
ideological basis.
No, I don't think so. It's not an idea. Ideas are created.
Well, that's a matter of semantics.
God doesn't have ideas. Well, it's important. God doesn't have fikr.
Well, no.
In Arabic, the word idea is fikr, and God is not mufakkir.
Well, I don't know why the idea should be translated into fikr when, same as why
Ideya. No, it's ideya. It's a Greek word. It's a Greek word.
No, but why, as much as deen is translated into religion, which doesn't really...
I mean, Islam is an understanding. I would accept that, but not an ideology. Ideology is horrible. Ideologues are the worst types of people.
Well, I couldn't disagree
Yeah.
with it.
They're the worst types of people,
Right.
ideologues. And that's what a lot of Muslims have become. They've taken Islam as an ideology. It's become like a